Ladies and gentlemen, CD's joined me back upstairs at the Cagezilla studio, and I'm glad to have him. And you know, Charles, every time I tell somebody that there is so much love in this sport, they think I'm crazy if they don't know the sport. But thank you, Edwin, for getting up and for giving us that fight. That was amazing. Thank you, Carlos. But folks, if you could see it from up here, when everybody was waiting for Edwin to feel better and get back up, every person in this place was standing up and watching and waiting for him to get better. And his opponent, Carlos Martinez, was sitting in the cage waiting for the same thing. We get the best medical care we possibly can for these fighters, and sometimes you will see amateur fights that sometimes, rarely, get stopped a little early. That's because they're amateurs. And this is a classroom, and there is so much love in this sport between the fighters. Yeah, they chirp at each other. Yeah, there's all these great stories. But the fans love it, and let's talk about the crowd a little bit, Charles, because this crowd was into it. They were paying attention. They knew what they were watching. And it's funny, there was one VIP table right next to where the fighters walked out, and they were getting fist bumps, and the fighters are amping up those guys, and those guys are amping up the fighters. Great crowd tonight. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely electric. And I really want to get into this. I think we should start with bout 7 and work our way back.
I could not agree more.
So there was a lot that was happening in this fight. And I think that in the first round, one thing we were seeing was that Carlos, who I think I've known, he's known for having such good footwork, tremendous footwork, cuts a lot of angles, doesn't get hit too much, but lands really significant strikes of his own. He ended up getting in a situation where he was trading with Edwin Francois. And that's not something I think anybody really wants to do, as is evident by how hard Edwin hits. After that initial adjustment where he felt that power and he felt that strength, one thing Carlos was doing was he was firing that inside leg kick, right? Rear leg to inside leg kick, which would take away the torque from Edwin's punches. And that's why he ended up arming shots a little bit more. They still hurt, but it took away a lot of the spice, so to speak, of that power. And it gave him the opportunity to start to cut those angles and land counters of his own. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a real small detail he did, but it was very, very impressive.
Very important. And it bled a little bit of power off of Edwin's punches.
Exactly.
And Edwin landed a really nasty one of his own that put Carlos on the mat briefly. Carlos stood up and said that was good.
Yeah, I'll tell you, being cage side, every shot Edwin landed was hard. It was enough to put down, I think, 90% of the other fighters on the planet.
But a guy who's not about to go pro.
But it's just a testament to Carlos's ability to recognize danger and make in-round adjustments, as opposed to waiting to the end of the round, which is where we saw him make further adjustments that led to the end of the fight.
Now, one thing, we know Edwin's in shape. You will see a lot of fighters, and we've seen it here in Cagezilla, they gas and their hands drop. That I don't think was Edwin's. I think Edwin was just confident and confident in his touch and his distance and timing, and it was working for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing you'll find with Edwin specifically was that he's pretty smart. He was in good shape. I don't think he was gassed by any means. I think when he was walking forward with his hands down, he was really trying to bait Carlos into that type of trading fight, right?
Agree.
1 for 1 or 2 for 1, whatever it might be. That's an exchange that Edwin is going to win. Carlos had to make an adjustment to prevent that from happening, which is why he was throwing those inside leg kicks, which is why he started angling off, and he started controlling the range a little bit differently. He added a lot of feints to his arsenal and a lot of feints to his striking diversity, which is actually what led off that big knockout there at the beginning of the second round. He started with a couple feints, and then when he just adjusted back, Edwin realized he was out of range, and that's what allowed him to get that counter.
Absolutely. What a fight. Edwin, we're glad you're okay. Come back soon. Carlos, if you go pro, maybe we'll see you on one of our pro-arms. Thank you both, gentlemen, for coming. And let's talk, before we get into each of these other fights, the overall toughness level tonight. You don't often notice an extra level of toughness in a night of MMA fights. But there were guys who were dishing it out tonight, and oftentimes the guy who was getting the worst of it in the first 2 rounds ended up winning the fight. We must have seen that 3 times tonight.
Yeah, a lot of toughness, a lot of grit tonight. I think you saw some folks who were taking quite a bit of damage who were able to overcome that, and I think that's really a testament to their cardio, their conditioning, and of course, like your mental capability, right? Like your mental toughness to just be put in a situation that's not going your way, that you don't know how it's going to end, and forcing yourself to find that most optimal solution. And I think we saw quite a bit of that tonight from a lot of debuters as well. I know some of these folks making their debuts had extensive careers in other combat sports, even at just the amateur level, but this is a whole new environment. When you're in the cage, this place is packed, you have an electric crowd, there's a lot of factors that are going to go into it that are going to change, I think, the way you would normally fight. And especially when you put on those small gloves, every punch hurts more, you can't block the same way. There's just so many factors that go into it.
Yeah, you can't. Working boxing gloves to MMA gloves, try it sometimes. It's 2 different things entirely. First battle of the night, Alexander Hunt defeated Jack Matalovich, and such great exchanges in this fight. Lumberjack ended the first round with a right that could have ended the fight. Alexander entered the second round just with the knees and the uppercuts and using his height. I loved what both of these fighters brought to their game.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I felt that for Jack to have to win, I thought he would have to get the fight to the ground. But when it was on the ground, I was really impressed with Alexander's jiu-jitsu, his ability to take the fight to the ground. He had a couple really nice throws, and it really became about who would have more success in the clinch and in that dirty boxing range. And despite Hunt's significant Muay Thai experience, I actually thought Jack did a little bit better there. But when Hunt started making that adjustment and doing a better job of controlling the range, it created more opportunities, and that's where we ended up seeing the submission that we saw.
With those knees and those uppercuts, really did a great job of using his height. Now, our super heavyweights, and you and I talked about this backstage a little bit, really great to see super heavyweights, but let's talk a little bit more about Justin Blair and his straight right hands. It was a short fight. We didn't get to see much of Justin Carter. I hope we do again. But those big, straight right hands, he'd mix up the angles. Love to see him down to 265. Ryan McDonald said he went up to fight Justin. He knew how big Justin was. He didn't cut, so he wouldn't be giving up that much weight. But 265 is his weight class. Can't wait to see him at heavyweight.
Yeah, no, I thought Jordan did really well. He's obviously an athlete, and you could tell by his footwork and his explosiveness and really just his aggression.
Pressure.
And the pressure. Great point. You know, when you're in there, that type of forward progress is a lot to deal with. And for your first fight, sometimes it's who can overwhelm who first. And I think we saw that tonight. And with those big guys, each punch hurts a lot more, and that's how it goes.
Yeah, and pressure. Sometimes it makes diamonds, and sometimes it collapses mountains. This was my fight of the night. I have about 3, but I think this has got to be it. I'm glad we don't have to actually pick one. But Martine Velazquez and John D. Fuller, we are literally seeing future fighters just develop here in this crucible. That ring, I've always said, the amateur cage is a classroom. Winning and losing is nice, but you're in there to learn and get better for your next fight. Both of these guys must have learned so much. Martine proved that he is not just a stand-up fighter. And holy smokes, we saw some sneaky good hands out of John D. Fuller, and just my fight of the night. It was amazing.
Yeah, this one was really, really good. I mean, as far as debuts go, this was probably like the best debut I've ever seen. Yeah. You know, Martine, his control of range, it was very clear that he's had success in Muay Thai. Like, it's just inevitable, right? The way he was controlling the range,
the way he moves,
his counters, everything he was doing was really, really good. But I was very impressed with John D, because even though I felt that Martine was in control this whole fight, and as he made more and more adjustments, it only went better and only went more his way. I loved how John D just kept fighting hard, kept trying to put himself in positions
was
for
never
success.
out of the fight.
Never was out of the fight. And he took some really hard shots. His nose was busted up. But for his cardio, he just was able to keep on driving and keep on, threatening with submissions, pushing into these attacks. There was a lot I felt he did right.
And you talked about it, and I talked about it when we came up backstage to the studio. At 18 years old, that skill set, and he's only going to get stronger.
Yeah.
And that skill set, 4 or 5 years from now, with just added mass and muscle, cannot wait. Oh, I wonder can't wait to see him fight both these guys. I want him back. Isaiah and Will, we didn't get to see too much of these guys. I want to see them both again.
Yeah, well, I thought Isaiah, there was a lot he did right, and he was always on the defensive, and that was kind of the issue, But there was a lot of good choices he made to keep himself in the fight. But Will Breslin, for a tall, rangy Thai fighter, I thought he had great ground control, pun intended.
Really good.
So, I think both guys are going to have a career. I'd like to see Isaiah get a little bit more active, stay in here, keep going with it, because there's a lot of attributes I'm seeing that would go a long way to a successful MMA career. It's just a matter of sometimes putting it all together, and also it's luck of the draw, right? Like, everybody had to fight. Somebody had to fight John Jones for their first fight.
Yeah.
Somebody
had GSP.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And in this case, somebody had Will Breslin, and I thought Breslin did really, really good. Excellent grappling, good head pressure. Every time he went to pass, he was using his forehead as a way to control. It was very, very impressive.
Both guys, very impressive. Can't wait to see both of them again. I sound like a broken record with that, but it's true. This one, holy smokes, the action in McCloskey and Wallace. You know what? I thought Wallace had some really good submission defense and hit McCloskey hard a few times. We saw some chins tonight, Charles.
Yeah, I thought Charlie did a really good job, though, of opening up some strikes. He was getting out of the way, he was slipping, and he was landing some right hands that ultimately he ended up finishing the fight with. There was just quite a few things he did well. But for Andre Wallace, his submission defense, especially in the first round, was super
Really
impressive.
good.
He got out of some really difficult situations, and he went and tried to do that again in that second round. And that was, he almost got out of it, but Charlie actually ended up making adjustments to get that submission, and I thought it was very impressive.
Yeah,
I mean,
and we saw the head kick out of Charlie. We saw great hands out of Charlie.
Yeah,
And that when he climbed up Wallace in the first round to try and take us back and get the RNC, and again, great defense out of Wallace. Gosh, it was a heck of a night. Let's talk about our co-main. Miles Mccollum, 22 years old. Chip McFarland, 21. Again, we're seeing future stars in the making here at Cagezilla. We know Miles is going to get a handle on the weight cut. And again, he was dropping straight right hands. We saw an amazing display of Taekwondo variety. You know, and anybody who thinks, oh, those Taekwondo kicks aren't practical, they can't work, just watch a replay of that fight because they work when they're thrown well. And of course, you know, all those kicks and he ends it with a guillotine in the second round.
It was really impressive. So on the broadcast, I talked about it quite a bit. The diversity of striking from Chip was just tremendous. He was always throwing a different strike from a different angle, and he was just doing a lot right. I like how he's using pressure. He hurt Miles early, and I think that's what allowed him to really drive the fight. For Miles, though, at times he was listening to Micah, who was telling him, his coach Micah Terrell, saying, hey, believe in it, jab, jab, cross, pressure. And that's what you have to do when you have somebody who's so creative with their striking, and they're using a lot of feints, they're moving their body a lot of different ways you're not used to seeing, and then they're firing kicks from unorthodox angles. You need to have them on their back foot, and you need to have them backing up. And at times Miles would do that, but Chip just kept making adjustments. It's not as simple as like, here's the problem, here's the solution. The problem and the solutions are constantly evolving. As you come up with one answer, they're gonna come up with a different question. And you're gonna have to continuously find the right answer for the specific question they're asking. So I think for both guys, for their their second and third fights, really have a lot to be proud of. And I thought that was a great one. And for Miles, you know, I know he was hurting a little bit, but I will tell you that rising through these types of moments and pushing through a situation that other people, or maybe even yourself years ago, would have folded from, there's a lot to take in there and there's a lot to be proud of. And for Chip, you know, the proof is in the pudding. You've been at this gym since you were 14, and you've clearly developed into a very talented fighter, and I'm looking forward to see just how both guys go moving forward.
Yeah, and it's a really good point you made about the angles. I mean, we saw spin kick, teep kicks, hook kick, roundhouse, like you know, almost got inside of Miles' OODA loop a little bit. Like, okay, they're coming literally from every single angle. Tough to train against that unless you get another really high-level Taekwondo guy in your gym. And, you know, they don't grow on trees like super heavyweights. So really, like a tough opponent to train for. And clearly Chip doesn't skimp on his ground game training either, because ended it with a guillotine. Unbelievable. And then we're back to our main event. Gosh, I hope, Edwin, I know you're going to be okay. I hope you get back on duty soon. Oh, that mouse over his eye was, yeah, I'm glad they got it under control. We have such a good medical staff. They got it down. They got him back out there. It was fantastic.
Yeah, great night of fights. And as always, I mean, you know, Cagezilla just, you guys, they do it so well. I could tell you from being in as a fighter, working in the industry, doing commentary, there's just no other promotion like this where you could see so many high-level fights, especially as debuts. Like that. That's really something significant.
Yeah. Plus, they throw a great after party right downstairs. So listen, let's thank everybody. Let's thank our producer, Mike Peveril. Hey, doing everything tonight, including potentially bouncing. Thanks to Kevin and Chris and this guy at Color Commentary, Ryan McDonald. You do a fantastic job with the matchmaking. Paul with the photographs. Up here, I got Scott, Ryan, Catherine, and TJ taking care of us up here in the studio. They do fantastic work. And, of course, our CEO, Jeff Wild, without whom none of this would be happening. We are grateful to you. SalisburyCenter.com, GetWild.com. Get here and see what's going on. All sorts of things. It's a great bar. The food's good. We talked about the music that's coming up. March 26th, TCB, kickboxing is going to be here. If you like the stand-up game, that's your night. And, of course, April 23rd, our first pro-am fight in 10 years right here at Cagezilla. This building is going to be even better the next time you come. And hopefully, Charles, I will, because I got to keep up with you. Thanks for everything. Thank you guys for taking care of us. We will see you downstairs at the party. See you soon.